Every once in a while, a moment unfolds that forces the world to stop and ask a difficult question. When chaos erupts and lives are at risk, who steps forward and at what cost? Recently, incredible footage surfaced, showing a civilian charging toward danger, tackling an armed attacker in public view. No badge, no uniform, just a split-second decision that changed the outcome of a deadly situation. What do you think about actions like this? Do you see it as heroism, desperation, or something far more complicated? And how should the law treat someone who intervenes in moments like these? Share your thoughts and see how many others feel the same way. What happened next is a powerful reminder of how fragile the line is between control and catastrophe. In public spaces, where fear spreads faster than facts, every movement carries consequences. A single decision by an officer, a suspect, or an ordinary person can alter the trajectory of an entire incident. The footage doesn't just show bravery. It exposes the raw reality of violent encounters in open environments. There are no clear perimeters, no controlled angles, no guarantee that intervention won't make things worse before they get better. Yet, in those seconds, hesitation can cost lives. This is where public perception often clashes with operational reality. From the outside, moments like these look decisive and cinematic. From inside the incident, they are chaotic, unpredictable, and shaped by instinct more than intention. Law enforcement professionals train for years to manage these risks. Yet even they understand that public spaces magnify danger in ways no training can fully eliminate. As we move forward, it's important to understand that incidents like this are not isolated acts of courage or violence. They are part of a broader pattern where confined interiors, crowded environments, and armed confrontations collide, forcing rapid decisions under extreme pressure. To truly understand what unfolds next, we need to look beyond the viral clip and examine how gunfights and armed confrontations evolve in different environments, where space, visibility, and human behavior determine whether a situation stabilizes or spirals out of control. And from here, the focus shifts to those moments when restraint, coordination, and calculated movement become the difference between resolution and tragedy. In moments like the Bondi incident, one factor dominates everything else: environment. Public spaces transform armed confrontations into unpredictable, high-risk scenarios where control is fragile and time works against everyone involved. Unlike controlled operations, open areas introduce moving variables, crowds that scatter, bystanders who freeze, and suspects who blend into chaos. Gunfire in these settings doesn't just travel through space, it ripples through fear, forcing instant reactions that are rarely coordinated. This is why law enforcement approaches public space confrontations with extreme caution. Every angle is compromised. Every line of fire carries risk far beyond the intended target. Officers must balance immediate threat suppression with the responsibility to protect people who may not even realize how close they are to danger. From a tactical standpoint, the presence of civilians changes everything. Movement slows. Communication becomes fragmented. Split-second decisions must account for blind corners, reflections, glass, and noise that distorts perception. What looks like hesitation on camera is often deliberate restraint. Civilian intervention, while sometimes life-saving, adds another layer of complexity. When an untrained individual engages a suspect, officers arriving on scene face immediate uncertainty. Who is the threat? Who is helping? And who may be caught in between? In these moments, identification becomes just as critical as intervention. This is why many confrontations escalate, not because of intent, but because of misunderstanding. Shouting overlaps. Commands compete with panic. The line between hero and suspect can blur for seconds that feel far longer. As these situations unfold, law enforcement priorities narrow to three essentials: isolate the threat, create space, and regain control. Everything else becomes secondary. The challenge is executing those steps without turning a volatile moment into a larger tragedy. What public footage rarely captures is how restraint prevents escalation. A suspect contained without a trigger pulled is often the result of calculated patience, not indecision. And in crowded environments, patience is one of the hardest disciplines to maintain. As we look deeper into these encounters, it becomes clear that not all firefights are defined by gunfire. Many are defined by the tension that precedes it, the moments where control teeters, and the outcome is decided before the first shot is ever fired. When confrontations move indoors, the dynamics shift instantly. Space compresses, visibility collapses, and every step forward carries consequences that can't be reversed. In multi-story buildings, threats don't just come from in front, they come from above, below, and behind walls that hide intent. Sound behaves differently. Gunshots echo, footsteps mislead, and silence becomes just as dangerous as noise. What appears calm in one room can mask chaos just meters away. Officers advancing through confined interiors face constant uncertainty. Corners limit reaction time. Doorways funnel movement. Stairwells become choke points where control is hard to establish and easy to lose. Each level introduces new angles, new risks, and new assumptions that must be challenged before they become fatal. This is where disciplined movement matters more than speed. Rushing through a space invites ambush. Hesitation invites escape. The balance lies in methodical progress clearing rooms, not because something is visible, but because something could be. In these environments, suspects often rely on elevation and concealment. A higher floor offers visibility and perceived control. A closed door offers time. But these advantages are fragile. Every move leaves traces, sound, shadow, pressure, small indicators that trained eyes are conditioned to notice. Gunfire in tight spaces amplifies danger. Rounds ricochet. Walls fail unpredictably. What stops a threat may also endanger someone unseen. This is why interior confrontations are often slower, quieter, and more deliberate than the footage suggests. For teams advancing upward through a building, patience becomes a tactical necessity. Stairwells are treated with caution. Each landing is assessed. Each door is a question mark that must be answered before momentum continues. The tension in these moments is rarely explosive. It's suffocating. Long pauses, controlled breathing, brief movements, followed by stillness. The outcome is often decided not by who fires first, but by who maintains discipline the longest. As these interior engagements unfold, the margin for error narrows dramatically. One misread shadow, one overlooked angle, one assumption carried from the last room. In confined spaces, mistakes don't echo, they end encounters. And when the confrontation extends upward, into layered floors and enclosed corridors, the stakes increase with every step, setting the stage for encounters where coordination, communication, and trust determine whether control is regained or lost entirely. When specialized units enter the picture, the nature of the confrontation changes again. These are no longer spontaneous encounters shaped by chance. They are deliberate responses to high-level threats where preparation, intelligence, and coordination become the defining factors. Facing heavily armed suspects, special units operate under the assumption that resistance is likely and escalation is imminent. Movement becomes precise, communication becomes minimal. Every action is calculated to reduce uncertainty before contact occurs. In these standoffs, gunfire is often the last option, not the first. Teams prioritize containment, positioning, and psychological pressure. Time is used as a tool. Silence becomes leverage. The goal is to exhaust options without exhausting control. Suspects in these situations may believe they hold the advantage through firepower or fortification. But against coordinated units, strength alone is rarely decisive. Structure matters. Discipline matters. And most importantly, unity of purpose limits the chaos that gunfights thrive on. These encounters often unfold in stages. Initial contact tests boundaries. Secondary movements probe weaknesses. Each response is measured against risk, not just to officers, but to anyone still inside the danger zone. The objective is resolution, not dominance. Footage from these operations often captures only fragments, brief flashes of movement, bursts of sound, moments of intense focus. What it doesn't show is the mental strain of holding position, waiting, and trusting that every other team member is doing the same. When confrontation finally peaks, it is rarely sudden. It is the result of mounting pressure, shrinking options, and decisions made long before the first shot is fired. In these moments, the difference between control and catastrophe is often invisible to the camera, but critical to the outcome. As these high-risk operations progress, the environment, the suspect, and the responding units all converge toward a single moment of resolution. Whether that moment ends quietly or violently depends on choices layered over time, not seconds. And as the situation moves toward its final outcome, what remains is not just the memory of confrontation, but the consequences of how it was handled. When these confrontations finally come to an end, what lingers isn't the echo of gunfire, but the reality of how fragile control can be when violence enters everyday spaces. From public areas where civilians become unintended participants, to confined buildings where every doorway hides uncertainty, and finally, to high-risk standoffs involving specialized units, each environment reshapes the encounter in its own way. The threat may be the same, but the risks, decisions, and consequences are not. What moments like the Bondi incident reveal is not just bravery, but complexity. Heroic actions can save lives, yet they can also create new dangers in an already unstable situation. Law enforcement is forced to operate within that tension-balancing urgency with restraint, speed with clarity, and action with accountability. These encounters are rarely about force alone. They are about judgment under pressure, about recognizing when to advance and when to pause, about understanding that in high-risk situations, the safest outcome is often the quietest one. The footage we watch compresses time. It removes hesitation, fear, and doubt. But in reality, those elements shape every decision made on scene. Every step forward is weighed against what could go wrong, not just in that moment, but in the seconds that follow. Understanding these dynamics doesn't mean choosing sides. It means seeing the full picture, seeing how environments influence behavior, how stress distorts perception, and how outcomes are often determined long before the camera starts recording. If you have your own perspective on these situations, whether about civilian intervention, police response, or how public spaces change the risks, share it in the comments and see how many others feel the same way. If this breakdown helped you see these encounters more clearly, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing for more in-depth analysis of real-world law enforcement situations. Thank you for watching and for being part of a community that looks beyond the headlines to understand what truly shapes these critical moments.